and they saw that on one of the walls there was some smudges looking like someone had just tried to wash that wall off. Hi, welcome to another Criminality Patrol episode. Yes, in a straight line from India to Raciborsko, a small town near Wieliczka or maybe closer to Niepołomicz, it's about 5,000 kilometers. Well, of course, there is no direct connection between India and Raciborsko, but it so happened that the fate of a certain Indian woman, a young Indian woman, became closely tied to Poland and to Raciborsko. We invite you to watch the next episode of Uwaga.
We have an opportunity for the first 50 viewers. The first 50 people who join our closed community on Hero through the link in the description below this video will get as much as 50% off for the first month. We publish exclusive non-public materials there, but also standard episodes without ads for the equivalent of just one coffee per month. You can support the growth of our channel and enable us to record new reports.
Yonaki was born in India in a traditional family with strong ethnic ties. She had several siblings, including her sister Sarmila. This Sarmila was older than her sister. Years later, she recalled that they were very different from each other. Yonaki was basically very compliant, gentle, and accepted everything that fate gave her. She didn't complain. However, she said that she caused trouble for her parents. She was always complaining, always making excuses. She said they were completely different from each other. However, they were doing quite well because the girl's father, the head of the family, was a diplomat and had quite a lot of money. And this Yonaki. The girl showed extraordinary musical talent from a very young age. First of all, she realized very quickly that she wanted to sing already at the age of 11 because her parents could afford it. She took singing lessons and learned vocals. What's more, they set up a real professional music studio in their house where she could sing, record, and had musical instruments. Everyone expected her to have a music career, but they also came to a conclusion. Because for some time, or actually for many years, Yonaka's extended family had been living in the United States. The family living in Chicago said that maybe it would be better if she came to the United States. Maybe in America her career would progress faster in the American style and she would have a real career there, not in India. Yonaka was very brave. By nature, she approached all kinds of ventures like this boldly. She said she wanted to go to America. She was only 17 at the time, but she had the courage to do it. Her family from Chicago sent her an invitation. She bought a ticket, and Yonaka, as I said, at the age of 17, got on a plane and flew to Chicago. She was picked up by her beloved Aunt Mala. Yonaki. She lives with her family in Chicago, enrolls in college, studies, and in the afternoons takes singing lessons. It's certainly not easy, but she's managing. Here she can count on the help of this family. After a year, it turns out she has an incredible chance to sing at Madison Square Garden. Well, everyone who sings dreams about that, of course, moving to New York in New York. She basically remains alone, destined to live there, on one hand building her career, on the other hand still taking singing lessons, and she has to somehow make a living. She is extremely ambitious. She no longer wants to rely on the care of her family in Chicago or her parents who stayed in India. So she decides to get a job. First, she works in an office, then as a cashier, and she also rents a tiny apartment in the Bronx. She never complains. As her older sister said, she never complained. It definitely wasn't easy for her. From what we know, she couldn't even pay for that apartment because she had to save money somehow. She didn't eat enough. It was hard for her. Despite that, the vision of her career, that she would make a career in the United States, was, I would say, motivating for her, the most important thing. That's what guided her, and she dreamed of becoming an outstanding singer. Unfortunately, after a few years, Yonaki realized that she probably wouldn't make a career in the United States. That there are many people in America who sing very well, who sing beautifully. Therefore, she decided that she needed to have some kind of backup plan. She started learning computer applications and came to the conclusion that if she learns this, she might survive in New York. And that was her emergency backup plan. On the other hand, here in Poland, Maciek lived. He was from Krakow, from an intellectual family. His father was a lecturer at the Jagiellonian University. He taught mathematics, and so did Maciek. He was of average height, but a blond guy. I would say women liked him. Everywhere he showed up, women looked at him with longing eyes. He could tell stories, he talked a lot, he spoke nicely, and that attracted women. He was appealing. Well, nothing strange about it, I would say. When he was still studying, and he studied and graduated in art history, he met a girl, a woman. She got pregnant, had a child, and very quickly he became both a husband and a father. He was interested, just like Yonaki overseas, in a certain kind of art as well, though a bit different, mainly graphic design and photography. That's what interested him. But he also had an artistic soul. Well, after some time, however, he came to the conclusion that this marriage wasn't really for him. While he loved his little daughter, things were no longer going well with his wife. They simply separated, and by the age of 27 he was already divorced. Like Yonaki, he decided not to pursue a career in Poland. Yonaki, of course, realized this in India, and he realized it in Poland, that he wouldn't make a career here. He decided to leave Poland and look for happiness somewhere else. First, he went to France, where he tried to find work in various places. That didn't go very well for him, so eventually he got on a plane and flew to New York. He liked New York. It's a city that supposedly loves artists. Artists love New York, and New York loves artists. He rented an apartment together with a friend in Manhattan, and he tried to make what's called a career. I'm still talking about Maciek here. He maintained good relations with his wife, maybe because, or actually definitely because, he cared about his daughter. He loved his daughter. He wanted to see her. Well, he thought that if he had a bad relationship with his ex-wife here, then she would simply make it harder for him to contact and see his daughter. So all the time, that good contact, let's call it that, was just a complete coincidence. Was it just chance that Yonaki and Maciek ran into each other in New York? And was it love at first sight? They looked stunning because they were completely different. Physically, he had Slavic features, she had a dark complexion. They were totally different in terms of religion, culture, and customs. Basically, they had nothing in common. But it's probably also true what they say, that opposites attract. So both Yonaki and Maciek was simply drawn to each other to the point that they moved in together fairly quickly. Yonaki clearly fell in love. She liked Maciek. Of course, she knew that he was already divorced and that he had a little daughter, but she still wanted to go through life with him. She talked about them getting married, and Maciek was drawn into this marriage. He wasn't really preparing for it. He had just gotten divorced. He didn't want to get involved again. It seemed that, of course, he loved Yonaki too, but he approached the idea of making the marriage official with a certain kind of reservation and simply wasn't in a hurry to get married. Well, Maciek wanted to stay in touch, as I said, with his daughter. He also invited his ex-wife and the little girl to visit him in New York to his place. In the sense that they were in the same city, they didn't live together with him, but he did see them. Yonaki was very jealous about that, about those relationships. I think she never really knew what kind of relationship Maciek had with his ex-wife. It was awkward. There were already some kinds of misunderstandings appearing there. I think that's also why she let her mother in India know that this situation was happening. Yonaki's mother, Mrs. Sinha, came to New York, and it seemed that Yonaki's mother was running the whole family with an iron hand. She makes the decisions and is somewhat despotic. The relationship between her and Maciek wasn't the best, to put it briefly. Mrs. Sinha kind of affected Maciek like a red rag to a bull. So those relations... The atmosphere was getting more and more tense. Maciek's anger grew even stronger when Yonaki's mother decided that they couldn't go on living like that. They couldn't live in what's called a common law relationship but had to get married. Well, this marriage was an Indian ceremony, of course. Legally, it didn't mean anything. It was only significant in a religious sense. Of course, yes, for Yonaki's mother, that was enough. Enough formally, from a formal religious point of view. The marriage was concluded, so the situation calmed down here. The marriage was concluded. Maciek also somehow got out of this situation because he knew that he wasn't formally a husband. And it seemed that everything would somehow calm down, that Mrs. Sinha would go back to her place, to India, but nothing like that happened. Yonaki's mother said that since that's the case, since they're already married, she'll stay with them for a while and enjoy spending time with her daughter and son-in-law. The situation was already getting quite unpleasant then. Everything was hanging, I would say, by a fine thread. It was a kind of volcano that could erupt at any moment. That's what it was. Well, Maciek was thinking about how to get out of this situation. And here he came up with, I would say, a completely crazy idea. That they're giving up on New York, that everyone is moving to London, because Yonaki's older sister, Samila, had been living there for some time. That's the one I mentioned to you at the beginning. So he came to the conclusion that if Yonaki's mom, as I mentioned to Yonaki, well, maybe this situation would be better. That's what happened. They all moved to London and lived with the other daughter, Yonaki's sister, Samila. That's right, but living there wasn't easy. It turned out that in London they couldn't just find a job. It was very difficult. It turned out that things were getting worse. Maciek wasn't earning, Yonaki wasn't earning. After some time he starts a company. He's an interior decorator. And in some way they're doing okay. I mean, they're doing okay in the sense that He has some orders that some money has started to come in. Things are starting to get better, but at the same time, Maciek is still keeping in touch with his ex-wife and his daughter. As you remember, this makes Yonaki angry and resentful. Right between them, more and more disagreements are starting to appear, and they're getting bigger. I would say they're becoming more aggressive. The situation eases a bit. When Yonaki gets pregnant, she actually gives birth to a healthy baby girl. Unfortunately, right after giving birth, she starts suffering from postpartum depression. Problems begin. Yonaki has to seek help from a psychologist. Well, it's not easy. These arguments become more and more frequent, increasingly tense. That's also what the family said. There are some physical altercations. Maciek becomes aggressive. Yonaki doesn't hold back either. She throws small objects at him, and Yonaki is constantly jealous of his ex-wife. The situation is so tense that they decided to separate, meaning to spend some time apart. Maciek goes to Poland, Yonaki goes to India. But here it turns out again that they miss each other, that this separation made them want to meet again, and that's exactly what happens. They meet again in London, they come to the conclusion that they can't live without each other, that they want to stay together. As a result, at this point, Maciek agrees for it to be a formal relationship, and they actually have a civil wedding. In London, things are probably calmer for a while, but then it all comes back again. There are complaints and arguments again, and then it gets worse. Maciek comes to the conclusion that maybe he'll go back to Poland, take his wife, take his daughter, and return to Poland. Some conditions feel more familiar, more like home. The fact that he knows how to get by in Poland, that he has connections, that there's family, well, that could have made their life change a bit. That's probably what he was hoping for. He also bought a house in Raciborsko sometime earlier. That's near Wieliczka, or actually closer to Niepołom. It's not far from here, really. And, well, calling it a house is probably more just a name. There was still a lot of work to do there. The house was in, I'd say, a poor condition, barely habitable, really. A wooden house, not insulated, and the conditions inside were quite Spartan. But I also told you at the beginning that Yonaki was the kind of woman who accepted whatever life gave her. She didn't complain. So she moved into that house, and it seemed like she was simply content. All the more so because Maciek said he would renovate the house, that he would get a job, that everything would work out somehow, and things would definitely get better for them. So they came to Poland with that hope. They moved into their house. It was a bit out of the way, kind of on the outskirts of the town, and they started to build their life from scratch. All in all, between the time they met in New York and their arrival in Raciborsko, 4 years had passed. It was already 2008. Maciek tried to earn a living by working on construction sites. But after all, he was basically an artist. He had the soul of an artist, so I guess he didn't do too well on those construction sites. He earned some money, but not enough to renovate the house. It was enough for everyday expenses, but not really for anything more. Yonaki saw that renovating the house or finishing it quickly wouldn't be so easy. She started getting nervous again. But there was still a chance that Maciek would find another job, so there was some hope. Especially since when people saw it, they realized that we really did have plans. They saw it because around the beginning or middle of May 2008, they decided to organize a barbecue for their friends. Those friends came, and there really was a sense of optimism during that barbecue because they were talking about how Maciek would have a new job in Krakow in 2 weeks. Their daughter Pamela got into kindergarten and basically everything was going well. A few days passed, it's already May 16th, 2008. Sarmila, the older sister from London, is trying to call Yonaki. She calls once, twice, 3 times, but the phone doesn't answer. She knew this wasn't her younger sister's habit, so she got on a plane and flew to Poland. She arrived in Raciborsko. Unexpectedly, when she asked Maciek, she found Maciek at home and asked him where her sister was. Maciek replied that her sister wasn't there, that she had packed up, left him, and simply walked out on him, leaving their little daughter behind. But Yonaki simply didn't believe it. She went to the police in Wieliczka and said that her sister was missing. The police took the report 2 days later on May 18th. Maciek also went to the police and said that his wife had left him, that she was gone, and he came to report it as well. The police didn't really like that. 2 strange reports. They decided to check the whole matter on the spot by going to Raciborsko. Experienced officers arrived at the scene. They started walking around the house and saw that on one of the walls there were some smudges, which looked like someone had simply tried to wash the wall. Well, they didn't rule it out because there were traces that were simply blood stains. They started walking around after the session, looking around. They went to the garden and saw that there was freshly dug earth in the garden. Their intuition was right. They dug up the earth and saw that inside in a makeshift grave was Jonaka's body. Maciek was arrested immediately and basically admitted that he had killed his wife. It was right after that barbecue. Another argument, another quarrel, more complaints and excuses. He says he went into a rage, some kind of criminal frenzy. When he saw the axe hanging on the wall, he just took it down and hit Yonaki on the head several times. He realized he had killed her, didn't know what to do, dragged her to the garden and dug a shallow, basically a grave. As he admitted, to be sure, he hit her with the axe one more time before burying her, and then, well, he covered her with soil. And then he went home because their little daughter was sleeping there. He was simply afraid she would wake up. Maciek confessed to everything. The traces of the crime were obvious, and he was temporarily arrested. The trial began. Well, the court probably didn't see any kind of planning in all of this either, and it seems like it was just a moment. All in all, he was also lenient with Maciek. He sentenced him to 10 years in prison. Well, today it's already the year 2026, so Maciek has certainly been released from prison. He also said during the trial that he felt guilty, that he thought about killing himself. But he had 2 daughters. He also had someone to live for. It all ended with Maciek going to prison. He was stripped of his parental rights, of course, regarding the 3.5-year-old daughter he had with Yonaki. That little daughter was taken by Yonaki's mother. And right now she's in India. That's where she lives and stays. Maciek, when he killed his wife, he was 36 years old. Yonaki was 27. A tragic story. The motive, I would say basically none. A moment of anger, a fit of rage, and it led to a pit of misery. That's all for today's episode. Of course, subscribe to our channel, and as always, take care.
Attention, we have an opportunity for the first 50 viewers. The first 50 people who join our closed community on Hero through the link in the description below this video will get a 50% discount on the first month. We publish exclusive non-public materials there, as well as standard episodes without ads, for the equivalent of just 1 cup of coffee per month. You can support the growth of our channel and enable us to record new reports.